If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The following podcast is brought to you exclusively by the Rad Rob Radio Network.
This is PBA champion Kyle Troop.
Hey y'all, Jacob Ledrup here.
Jeff Riggles here from 11thframe.com.
Hey guys, Chuck Ritchie here, formerly of Bowl TV.
Hey guys, this is Ryan Schaefer of track staff at Valley Bowling Center in Waverly, New York.
And you're listening to Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr.
Yo, the boys from Straight Up 5, Rad Rob, Dr Ocho, and of course JP Jr.
Pick it out. Fear the fro, baby.
Welcome to Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr. A hard-hitting, in-depth, cutting-edge look into the world of bowling. This podcast will not only cover all things bowling, but will also give you a raw look into real-life issues. You'll get unfettered access into the mind of one of the most gifted bowlers of this or any other generation.
Strike, and they claim it. Similarly does it.
So without further ado, let's introduce you to the hosts of the show. Rad Rob, Rob Francois. Rad Rob, Rob Francois. Dr. Ocho. Dr. Ocho. And the incomparable Johnny Petraglia Jr. Johnny Petraglia Jr.
Hey guys, welcome back to Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr. I am your host, Rad Rob, Rob Francois. This is episode number 122, and we have a high-profile guest tonight. Well, I mean, most of our guests are high-profile, but technically this guy has the highest profile. He's literally the commissioner of the PBA. Before we introduce our special guest, I must introduce my co-host. Dr. Ocho will be a little bit late to the show. He's doing the father duties tonight. So we'll skip right to the man with the name of the marquee. He is number 7 in your program, number 1 in your hearts. The sexiest man in the world, Johnny Petraglia Jr. What up, what up? Good to see you, brother.
How are you, Rob? Always a pleasure. And obviously, great to see you and all of our fans and guests. And thank you all, as always, for being here and supporting our channel.
Wow. Apparently, Ocho is doing a great job at daddy duties right now. That was the lovely Gabriella.
He's been having some bowel movement issues. And apparently he just got out of there for like the 4th time. So he's taking the bull by the horns right now. So
okay, so he's scared shitless.
I'm sorry if I had to scream under mute real quick there. But
That's fair. That's fair. Who we got here in the chat? We got Nico. What's going on, brother? He's always first in the chat. Billy M. What's going on, brother? Crambone. What's going on, Crandall? We got CDB in the house. Good evening, Mrs. Ballard. We also have Brad Winsky. What's going on, dude? We love all of our chat and all of our listeners and followers and watchers. You ready, Johnny? You ready to bring this guy in?
I mean, actually, typically before we even start, I usually like to say something pretty awesome about our guest. And the first thing that I want to say front and center, first and foremost, is the PBA actually wouldn't be in the position it is right now or in the actual last 13 years without this man and his love for the sport that still gives all of us the viewing pleasure that we have sitting here, as well as the professionals and their ability to not only perform for crowds, make a living, but I am certainly ready to dive into the brain of the genius behind what we see all the time on a more intimate level. So absolutely, I am certainly ready to bring him in, Rob. So go right ahead.
We've been trying to get this together for a while. As you know, he's obviously busy doing so many things during the season. Now that the season's wrapped up, he may have a little bit more time. Plus, actually, Wednesday nights was typically his league night, too. So It's good to finally get this going on. We've been trying for several months now. But before we bring him in, I always like to play a little video package. But Johnny, you found a gem from the old vault there, back from 2001 from Long Island, or not the Long Island Open, from the Sun, Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. And I don't know if many people have seen this clip, but it was a good catch. So let's take a look at the lighter side of Tom Clark.
How you would fare against the pros. I think all of us have thought about that one time or another, where Tom Clark of USA.com got to live out a little Plimpton-esque saga. Here's Tom Clark trying to bowl against the pros.
Okay, guys, roll call. We're at it. Arnold. 17, John May. Here. Joey Denis. Here. Tom Clark.
I write about the sport for USAtoday.com, and the PBA Tour has been nice enough to give me an opportunity to see how I would do on a pro tour condition against the pros. Leading up to this tournament, I've been practicing and bowled in a couple other local tournaments. And in the local tournament, I would average about 210, 220. I don't really have a lot of expectation, but I'm going to give it my all.
128 bowlers, each bowling 9 games. Top 64 go on. The remaining bowlers go home. Winners get $1,000 minimum, and the losers get a hug and a kiss.
Clearly a horrible start. Possibly the worst game in the history of the Professional Bowlers Association.
We're watching Tom Clark bowl for a while, and we're just going to assume he's a better writer than he is a bowler.
We're here to make a living. We're here to make a living because we're good.
I'm struggling right now, and I have nowhere to run and hide. I have no one to call on for relief. If I move in and I hit it the way I normally do, it hooks too early. If I force it through, it's gone.
Right, it just sails.
Yeah.
Tom is getting some of the lessons that all of us armchair quarterbacks think we can do better. Tough.
Shirt's cool. That's good. I'd probably go for more of the orange pants.
Orange pants?
Yeah, he should keep the stage out right now.
Physically, my greatest injury today was my finger. Probably more damaging is my psyche or my ego, because I certainly believed I would do a little bit better than I did today.
Well, looking at that feature, I think, Randy, it's safe to say Tom was a tad disappointed in his performance, but I think that goes to show those of you who bowl in leagues, when you come to this level, it's a completely different story.
Tom needs to get some new skin and work on his spare game. But you know, we did have an amateur actually make it in the round of 64 this week.
That is outstanding, Johnny. That was a hell of a pick there to bring this guy in. That was top-notch stuff. I watching him smiling all the way through in the green.
And you know what's crazy is that's it's not only just Tom Clark. I mean, that's me. That's me also. I stink out there. Well, I'm not going to say Tom stunk, but like I actually tried it for a year and couldn't keep up with the guys out there. So it's absolutely badass. And obviously the PBA Tour is very humbling. So go right ahead and do what you got to do.
All right, let's bring in the commish. Theme song also suggested by Johnny Jr. Anybody remembers the commish from ABC back in the day? All right, let's not waste any more time. We've done enough. Everybody, it's our pleasure to bring you the PBA Commissioner, Mr. Tom Clark. Good evening, Tom. Good to have on the show, brother. Good to see you.
How you doing? Oh, that was fun to watch. Actually, I was crossing right next to me. I wasn't crossing with him, but on the left, the pair to the left of me was John Petraglia, the great John Petraglia. And just the double jump rule was making me as nervous as anything. I mean, I didn't want to jump Johnny Petraglia, And so it was that was a lot of I don't know if it was fun, but it was a good opportunity. I got a good story out of it. I remember USA Today actually put it like front page. It was really good. It was a good promotion of bowling. And I also remember that Justin Romack led that tournament. And I could not believe, I think he averaged 230 or something like that. And it was like, how could he possibly average 230? How hard it was. And it's eye opening for anybody who's just a regular league bowler. Johnny, you're much better than me. You would do better than I would, but I'm more of a regular league bowler. And if you're out there with those guys, you're just going to get run over. I mean, there's just nothing you can do about it. And it's remarkable. I bowled a U.S. Open once too at Carolier, and I remember Norm Duke led that one. And it was like, how could Norm Duke average 218 in this? It was impossible. It's completely impossible. And but I've had some good opportunities. Like at that U.S. Open, John Jowdy was watching me the whole time. The best coach in the history of bowling, people would say. And Jowdy, and I always remember, it was like the last day, and Jowdy's like, "Will you move right and get your hand out of it?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but if I move right," and he goes, "You're 400 under. What the hell difference does it make? Just move." It was so funny, but oh man,
it almost
different game.
Tom,
different
it's
game out there.
It's not a far cry from me either. I bowled the World Series of Bowling when Ryan Simonelli made a couple shows. I think it was 09 and 10, and I bowled a cheetah sweeper at the start of the World Series. The year they had it was almost like a documentary TV show, which was fabulous, and it was a best of 7 match where Duke triumphed over Ryan, and I made it in the sweeper into the finals, and I was like, yeah, it's going to be the best tournament ever. In the first game, I was throwing a Twisted Fury. I went front 10 washout, and that was my only 200 for the rest of the World Series. And I'm sitting there just like, oh, my God. Pete Weber's on my right. He's worried about a shadow. He's worried about this. He comes up to me in like game 6. He goes, "It's not you. I'm always next to this other guy. I don't remember his name." Man, I'm like, oh, okay, now I can finally relax for a game. I can bowl my second 200. So I listen, man. It's
that first World Series, in Detroit. I mean, that was actually those sweepers. I really thought would be a way to dress up the World Series, and had that thought through the years, and it fell off, and it just wasn't something people are interested in at a PBA event. They want the PBA to be something different, and because I wanted to turn the World Series into something a little closer to the World Series of Poker, which has so many side events going on all over the place and different types of events, long, short. And I still think the World Series could include that stuff and could be a bigger month somewhere. But it's evolved as it has, and it's still great. But that was the first one. I forgot that you were there for the first one. So.
Yeah, I'm a big poker fan. And when I first heard about the World Series of Bowling, I thought, okay, sure, it's going to be a bunch of random events and all that. I was kind of on the same thinking as well, and I agree. I think that would be a really cool thing to do if you could allot that much time out. Obviously, get some of the extra TV coverage for it, or maybe not cover the sweeper events and stuff like that. But I think you'd have probably a couple Cinderella stories of like guys making out the PTQ. You get guys that win the sweeper that could possibly make the TV show. I mean, that'd be good, a good story for TV. Going back to that piece that we showed in the beginning, it almost seemed like a hit piece. Did you throw any strikes at all? Because they did not show you making any and missing a 10-pin. It wasn't very nice to feature you that way.
Well, I probably missed like 7 10-pins. But no, I didn't have a spare ball. But I had a few strikes, but I did not. It was terrible. I mean, I probably averaged 170, something like that. Yeah. And it's like at the U.S. Open. I actually didn't bowl that bad and averaged like 180. I mean, and I actually bowled pretty good. Like I was 220th out of 500. Right. I was in the top half. But no, I could never bowl at that level. I thought that I could. When I was a kid, I always dreamed of being a PBA player. I went to bowl in college, and I had some success. I won an ACUI and got to go to Reno, and and I bowled with guys that made it big, like Brad Angelo. Like Brad was at Erie when I was in Buffalo, and Brad was like a year younger than me. And when he came into Erie, I didn't think he was anything. I mean, to me, he was right. He was like, oh, we got to teach this kid the ropes. Well, he knew how to bowl. His dad was a great bowler, and And I think that the biggest thing for me as a bowler, and I'm not saying that I would have been able to be great enough, because I ran into guys like Barnes in college and realized, no, that's a different world there. I mean, this guy is unreal. Yeah. And I cannot bowl like that. And when I was on the lanes with Barnes, I could feel it. You could feel this guy's a shark. He's a killer. He's a professional. It'd be like a really good high school basketball player, playing with Michael Jordan. It's not the same thing, Sure. But the biggest change for me in bowling was reactive bowling balls. And so I grew up using plastic and then urethane. And in 92, 93, after I graduated from college, is when reactive came. And it was very defeating for people about my age, in that anything that I learned how to do with my hand or hit up on the ball was completely useless when it came to reactive. And you saw guys that you used to beat that couldn't get the 5 out suddenly striking for days, and their balls were hooking, and it became defeating to people my age. And a lot of us quit. There's not a lot of people. I'm 55 now. And like Barnes, I'm the same age as Barnes, Patrick Allen, those were the Mika, there's a few guys that were in that class back then that adapted, but they know how it changed, and then there are guys who have become my friends, which is incredible, like Marshall Holman or, Pete Weber, and they'll tell you about how they either had to adapt and completely change their games or leave the game. And that was back in the early 90s. And it's so ironic that now the whole discussion is urethane. It's like, well, wait, that's old. What do you, but now there's so much more oil on the lane. It's not the same game. It's not the same impact of urethane that back when we bowled. But you guys know all that. But it really kind of messed with the games of people my age.
So, Tom, is it a crazy question to ask you? Because with urethane, I always was good when I was young, because I used to be able to hit up on it here on the East Coast now. I used to be able to send it to the gutter and watch it bang off the gutter. I was never, ever good at controlling it down lane. Like now with all the graphics, all the technology we have, not only do we see the speed, we actually see the players hitting what they're looking at 40 feet away from them every single time. I mean, it's crazy how good these guys are nowadays. But like nowadays, do you think, let's just use 2001, for example, at the Long Island Open. If you were allowed to hit up on it, the way you're allowed to hit up on it to a certain extent with urethane nowadays, do you think you would have performed a little bit better because it's more your game?
I've thought
like if you were to go out there right now and drill a 78 UIQ or a 78D Black Hammer, do you think you would finish higher than 220th out of 500?
I don't think so, because I think it's still a totally different game, because back then it might have been 14 mils, 15 mils. Now it's 30. So it's not the same hit up. The best bowlers like like Bob Learn would be a great guy to ask about that. I mean, that's how his whole game. I mean, that guy's forearm, he could beat anybody in an arm wrestling competition. And now he doesn't need to do that, but he still somehow does it.
He does.
I was watching Ryan Schaefer bowl last month, and he's learned how to, and he used to hit up on it. I mean, that was his style. I remember him actually coming to me in one of those tournaments and saying, "Hey, you throw pretty good," and that was actually important to me to hear a guy like Ryan Schaefer say, "You throw pretty good." And Schaefer has totally learned how to like spin it now. I mean, he's got a whole different release because he wants to stay in the game. He loves the game. He's a great competitor, and he's not leaving it. And so he's adapted. So I don't think so. Like he would be a good example. So why doesn't he just ball down to urethane, move right, and hit up on it like he did back in the day? He doesn't.
It's a great point.
So I think it's a different game. The levels of oil, the carry down is so much different, because now when they use urethane, they're pushing all that oil down the lane, and so it creates all these different angles. And I mean, I just read Belmo saying it again, and he said this for years. And And I know a lot of people have their different opinions of two-hand bowling or today's bowling, but I think Belmo makes a really compelling argument that it's more difficult now to bowl than ever before. You have to make so many decisions and so fast, and you have to execute so perfectly in order to make those decisions, and you have to anticipate them in a way that even back in the day, Johnny Petraglia didn't have to do that, and it's wild when I brought the plastic ball championship back when I started with the PBA.
My favorite event ever, by the way.
Yeah, I wanted to watch it.
That.
Yeah, and then I go to Buffalo. It was throughway lanes where I bowled. It's gone now. And Johnny was like, I don't know how old he was at the time. He must have been 60s, and I was probably older than that, actually. And it was 2009-ish, 10-ish or something like that. And he almost made that show. I mean, put plastic in his hand, and all these other guys didn't really know what to do, and he's just stroking it. I'm like,
timeout, Commissioner. I would like to toot my own horn here because that's the only event that I've ever beaten my dad in. I missed that show by 100 pins.
Oh, you and him were both up there?
I bowled. Wow. At that time, I was working corporate for Brunswick, corporate equipment. No, not corporate. Jesus Christmas, I can't even remember the title. Capital equipment for Brunswick. My boss was Dan Borgie, and his boss was Kurt Hars. And I had asked them for the week off to go to Norwich 10-pin the week before for the match play championship because my one of my closest friends at that time and former roommate was Matthew O'Grady, and Matt O'Grady had drilled 2 ebonite evolves, and I said let's go to Norwich. It's in my territory for capital equipment. They gave me 2 weeks off, and good old Mark Sabatine had laid out the plastic ball championship pattern on the end pair in Norwich, and I took a house ball off the rack and wore Sab's shoes, wearing jeans just to test the pattern for the following week. And one of my favorite people in the world, Chuck Gardner, looked at me like this from the back, and he goes, "Come here." He goes, "What are you doing next week?" I said, "I have to go back to work." He goes, "Tell him you need another week. Let's go to the truck. I got a couple layouts for a couple T-zones. You're coming to Babylon." And I wound up bowling and making it through the PTQ, making it through the 18 games or 16 games of qualifying, 18 games of match play. And I bowled my dad the first match ever of my first ever match play ever. I bowled my dad on the end pair next to the walkway at Babylon and missed a 5-pin. Went left to Brooklyn 5-7. I bowled my low game of the tournament against him, and then I averaged 250 for the next 8 games of that 9-game block. Made it to the top 16. Went out to lunch with Belmo, Bill O'Neill, and good old Bobby Hall II. And I remember ordering a plate of Texas cheese fries at Chili's and eating 2 bites because we had to bowl in 2 hours, and I was 100 pins outside the number. Dad had missed it from the top 32, and I go into the bathroom, and I definitely projectile vomited the 3 bites of chili fries or Texas cheese fries, and Simonelli comes in and goes, "Dude, you all right?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm as nervous as a mouse in the Hemingway house right now." It's crazy, and I went.
Well, now that's the one Brian Zizek won, right?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's
yes,
Babylon. Now,
I'm sorry. Yes, you're talking about Cheektowaga. I'm sorry.
Your dad finished like 7th.
Yes, he did,
and he had a shot. I think even in position round.
You're talking about the year Couch won. I'm a year off.
Yeah, that was Couch the next year. So the year you bowled with the Mark Roth ball, right? That was the Mark Roth ball.
We had the blue Mark Roth ball in Babylon, and then they had the black Mark Roth ball with all the logos on the side. The following year in Cheektowaga.
That was awesome. I mean, as you can guess, the ball companies didn't. The ball companies weren't fans of that event, as you can guess. But I was a fan of that event. You mentioned that year, that 2009 or whatever.
I could grab the shit out of it. It was the best.
Well, and I remember the first one was actually in Denver. And Barnes made the show, Pete Weber made the show, Mike Fagan made the show, and Jeff Carter won it.
And Jeff Carter.
And I remember I invited Brian Voss. I gave him a commissioner's exemption because at the time the only social media stuff was on the PBA message board. There was no social media. It was message board. And Voss was the famous guy to basically talk about how you need to bring back plastic and the balls need to go. And I mean, he was really on that. So I invited him to ball, and he almost made it. He lost to Fagan in the round of 8, or he would have made the show. But I sat with him during that show in Denver. Woody Page, the famous sports writer who's always on TV now, he was sitting right behind us. I remember that. And that was, I mean, I loved it. I thought it was electric, and the scoring was high. So everyone, acted like it was a joke. And it was like, no, here's why it's high. The guys don't have to move. If you tell Chris Barnes you only have to move one board left the whole tournament, this guy's a machine. He shot 800 that week. I mean, you can score with plastic, and it's not just because the lanes are easy. It's because you don't have to move, and you're that good. The players are better. I mean, it doesn't matter any sport. The players evolve, and become better and better and better. And so, it's really amazing. It wasn't. I don't know what your dad would say. I haven't really even had this conversation with him, but it wasn't that hard back in the day. I mean, it was because no one knew how to throw it. I mean, they didn't, because you learned from watching the greats, throw it at a way that would evolve the game, like Mark Roth, obviously. I mean, what Mark Roth was doing was blowing people's minds. It was bothering most people, actually, and they, just like two-handers are now. What is this? That's not bowling, But he was creating area. And as accurate as he is, in that he makes every spare, so he's accurate, he wasn't completely accurate. Watch the shows. I mean, not as accurate as they are today to score. The foul line adjustments, the ability to throw it accurately each time with the same hit that no one else had, gave him an advantage. And, God, I remember back in the day, it was kind of like, well, at least with the PBA, the lanes are oiled. In our bowling and people off the lane, you never knew when you showed up if the lanes would be oiled, if they'd be right, if they'd be wrong, if they, just the fact that the PBA had any kind of lane maintenance at all was interesting. So, so many things have changed.
Here's the first time I'm going to politely make an argument with you.
Yep.
I understand what you're saying, but for starters, I do understand that it was a totally different game. But the same way you just said that Mark Roth was like different than everybody else, when Jason Belmonte showed up, he was different than everybody else. And we watched commissioners' exemptions be given because he could bring a new flavor to the sport, because nobody could do what he could do. We saw lane conditions change because he was the only one that could throw it over the cap. We wanted him on television, not only because he's the best in the world, but he's an ambassador for the sport. He's a class act, and he's also a dragon on the lanes. He's an aggressive tiger. My dad, whether they were easy or not, when you are the first ever to eclipse the highest earnings record in a single season while Earl Anthony is out on tour, who is undoubtedly one of the greatest to ever throw a bowling ball, I'm not going to say the lanes were easy back then. I'm just going to say that it was a different time. One of the biggest comparisons that people make nowadays that always drives my brain nuts is when they try and compare Michael Jordan to LeBron James or Jack Nicklaus to Tiger Woods. Like, imagine Tiger Woods playing golf with Jack Nicklaus back then. Who would be better, right? It's a totally different ball of wax. Imagine Scotty Scheffler playing against Justin Thomas nowadays. Imagine Jackie Joyner-Kersee running against this new chick, Hannah Hall, that I'm watching in the Olympic trials in the decathlon or whatever it is, or Michael Phelps against Mark Spinks. I hate comparing generations, and I personally think it's almost shitty to devalue the legends of the sport in their respective eras. You bowled against the greatest bowlers in the world in 2001. This is like the introduction of quote unquote sport bowling, where all bowlers are forced to play a certain zone on the lane, and there's only certain bowlers that make it every single week. For instance, I love the PBA. I'm going to use Ryan Simonelli as an example. Ryan Simonelli is one of the best talents I've ever seen. And why does he have no chance against Packy Hanrahan, Dio Bernard, or Jesper Svensson? I personally think that nowadays he doesn't match up. I don't think that Jesper or Packy or Dio hit what they're looking at more than Ryan. And I think it's a little bit skewed. I'm being so respectful right now because I actually want your opinion on this.
Mm-hmm.
I think
we're saying the same thing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it was easy back then. I think it was different. And I think that
it wasn't set up to be hard necessarily like we have to do now. I like it better before. I don't it wasn't like, okay, we're gonna make the outside flooded so you can't play out, and they didn't even have such thing as patterns. I mean, so it's a completely different game. I mean,
I would actually think that nowadays the perfect technology that we have to lay out certain patterns, if you take away the topography, the conduit under the lane, which side of the bowling center is the front door on, which has better racks, which has this. I mean, back then we had a guy walking out there with a spray gun. And who's to say he's going to oil 40 lanes exactly the same? We saw a lot of guys in the late 80s, early 90s go Brooklyn the first 3 or 4 shots on almost every single show. We saw my dad was the 7th ever ABC televised 300 in its 37-year span in 1994. Now we've got almost 30-something or over 30. We've got 3 or 4 guys with multiple 300s.
Well, let me ask you this: the guys, sure. the guys barely hit the ball. Okay, so the question is, if they did, would they have scored better, or was hitting the ball then a negative? Like it kind of is now. It's a totally new release now.
That's a great question.
You're
exactly
there
right.
weren't many people that even thought to do it. Now, Norm Duke will tell me they didn't do it because it wouldn't work. Like two-hand bowling. So if we took Belmo and we said, go back in time, we drop him in 1970, would he blow everybody away? Because
I'm not sure.
Because he knows, that was
Mark Roth did curving it, but
he barely curved it. I mean, he just threw it harder.
Well, what about if we take the bowler of the decade for back-to-back decades and Walter A. Williams Jr., who has evolved with the sport and is now an excellent two-hander?
Mm-hmm.
He's decided that, what worked for almost 20 years, one of the most decorated career in the sport, who still loves to bowl, and now he's at a juncture where he's like, holy shit, I can't do this anymore. And Norm's retired. The really only exception to this rule, the guy who's really just kind of gone with the wave to me, is Pete Weber. Because Pete Weber's got 35 titles, 10 are with plastic, 10 are with urethane, and 10 are with resin, proactive, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but aside from that, if the greatest ever, and especially the greatest for 20 years, is now trying to develop a two-handed style, to me as a spectator, because I'm not a professional, and again, this is a question for you, Tom. And again, it's not an argument. Like, I want to get your views, because remember, especially since 2011, you are the man that has gone out of his way every single way from Sunday to keep this sport not only alive, but keep it prosperous, keep it on television. And we praise you for that. So please don't take anything I'm saying disrespectfully from that end. But the game is evolving, and there are certain players that evolve. But then there are certain players that hate it. Brian Voss won over $100,000, 11 consecutive years on tour. He won one title in 14 consecutive years. I mean, and now he hates the game.
Yeah.
It's that part for me that
it's crazy. I mean, Marshall Holman, I love, and he's one of my best friends, and he bought in, and he loved watching Belmo, and he's like, God, this guy's great, and he would tell me, but he's told me recently, I don't think it's bowling without the thumb in the ball, and he just doesn't really like it anymore, and I, of course, I respect that. It's it's a great conversation. I don't, I think.
Don't get me wrong, Tom. I think two-handers
recreated
the game. I think they're amazing.
And they've inspired a lot of people to bowl. I mean, here's the thing about like Mark Roth. He inspired me and all the people my age to bowl, and he made us all rip the shit off the cover of the ball, and that's why we all got, all didn't understand what to do when it was reactive, including Pete Weber, and he figured it out because he's gifted, but we didn't know what to do. We all grew up and we wanted to get into bowling because of Mark Roth. We didn't really get into it because of, or it didn't make us just inspired to just have to watch if it was a run-of-the-mill player. It had to be somebody that was just doing things you hadn't seen before, and that's what lifts all sports. And Belmo became that person for this whole era. And now you have all these kids that are bowling. If kids are getting into the game because of it, and it's more fun. And as much as Walter Ray is one of the greatest competitors I've ever seen, I mean, he is a killer. He tries on every shot to hit the pocket and strike, and he wants to win every game. He doesn't want to just win. He wants to show you that you'll never beat me. He wants to come back and he is the best competitor I've ever seen. But when he was out there all those years, who bowls like him? It was like nobody said, I'm inspired by this and I want to bowl like Walter Ray. They probably should have, they'd be making money, but with Belmo, they do.
My dad and I used to talk about this all the time. Like Walter Ray could make 100 shows, but nobody would buy the bowling ball he's throwing. But if Robert Smith makes one show, everybody goes and buys that
Tommy
ball.
Jones,
so that I do understand.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's a certain electricity to a way of bowling that's inspiring that is what you need in any pro sport. But I will say, like you sort of alluded to the idea that, well, the lanes were, you didn't say it, but it kind of came across like the lanes were set up for Belmo, and that I just got to tell you, that's not true. And anybody that told you that is full of shit. I mean, I actually remember one time Belmo made a show at the U.S. Open or something. It was at Woodland Bowl, and it was after he did his interviews with TV. And I just went up to him, and there was all this stuff online about how we set him up for him and how we just want him to win, and he's got to be on TV, and this is all my doing and all this. And I just went up to him and I said, I want to let you know, that's incredible bowling you did. And we have never once talked about setting lanes up for you. We have never once thought, let's do this. Now, if things worked out that way, because he's very versatile too, and especially now, he used to not be able to really play out on short. I mean, it's true. But in most U.S. Opens, it was 40 feet or whatever. And so it just never happened. And we have people that were in bowling, I mean, that were there, like your friend Sabatine, publicly say that. And that is a lie. That is a bold-faced lie that I've approached him about. And it pisses me off. There was never a time that we set lanes up for anyone. And believe me, the way people think we don't know what we're doing, we wouldn't be able to anyway.
If you didn't know what you were doing, you guys wouldn't be here, because you are, again.
And that was Kirk Von Kruger. You think he cheated? Kirk Von Kruger has never done anything that was wrong.
Anything wrong in his life?
Never. And ask him.
Neither has anybody in his family.
No. And so I hated reading all that stuff. And it just it drove me nuts. And that's why I actually told Belmo that. And he said he appreciated it. And then we just went on, But he'll never escape that, because people want to believe what they want to believe. And,
I mean, they're just
Tom,
jealous.
you know what? And Rob, I'm sending this to you in 1 second. And Tom, I appreciate that. And you know what? I'm gonna put my tail between my legs here and say that the reason I said that was the first show that he made when it was Shark on the left and he was throwing plastic on the right, because I heard it at a very, very young age. Belmo, in my eyes, is the greatest the game has ever seen. And honestly, undoubtedly. I think Simo is giving him a run. I think Earl Anthony and Walter Ray are neck and neck, and I personally think the greatest talent to ever hit the lanes is Pete Weber. But I do appreciate that response very, very, very much.
I'll tell you this.
But Tom,
Tom,
Rob, I'm so sorry to cut you off. Rob, I made a promise at the top of the show that we would field not only Rob's questions, but also all the questions in the chat. And I'm stealing the show again. I'm going to take 3 quick minutes to go check on Ocho. And Rob, I want you to ask your questions and field everything from everybody in the chat. And I'll be right back. You guys are the best.
Tom, you're about to follow up with what he was saying. What were you going to say?
Oh, God. Oh, I was just going to say that, he mentioned Simo and he mentioned, the greats and Pete Weber being the greatest talent, which I don't disagree with at all. I actually think maybe the second greatest talent and the one of today is EJ Tackett. His talent is next level. Everybody's talking about all this two-hand bowling. He's doing it one-handed, and he led everything for the last 2 years, and for several years he's been up and down with leading everything. And since Pete Weber, I remember the first time I saw EJ Tackett, and I pulled out my phone, and this was when phones were new. I'm like, and I filmed him. It was in Milwaukee. It was 2013, his rookie season. I'm like, this kid, what the hell? And I filmed him, and I've re-aired that shot that I took of him many times on my Facebook page, and because I realized I was seeing something that only comes around once a generation, and that's probably the way they saw Pete when he first started. It was like, wow, wait a minute, never seen this, and it's incredible. And now the next level of that is EJ, and so we're lucky. We're lucky to see a time when you can actually sit here and debate and go, well, this guy Belmo, who has 15 majors and has dominated the tour for 10 years, is bowling at the same time as people that other people say are better, like EJ Tackett, Anthony Simonson, and that's a very rare. Oh, it's kind of like back in my day watching as a kid and Mark Roth, Marshall Holman, and Earl Anthony, and you go, wow, if you can have 3 people like that, it's wild.
That's a great point. You're right. We are seeing that again, and each generation obviously always has an elite field. We've seen it in every single sport, and with guys like Belmo and Simo and EJ, and throw in Marshall Kent. I mean, there's so many good bowlers that you have on tour right now. It's fun to watch, and those guys, the elite, are so dominant. It's hard for other guys to grind out the PTQs. I was speaking with Nate Garcia a couple weeks ago at the PBA 50 event in Smyrna, Tennessee, and he's almost thinking of not bowling as many tournaments because the PTQ grind is so hard, and there are so many talented players out there. We've seen guys like D-Ron come out this year and get his first win through the PTQ. We saw Boog have an amazing year. Boog is such a good kid. Dio Bernard, Eric Jones. You had a lot of new winners this year, and it's really cool to see that. But for the most part, except for the few anomalies, it kind of is the same guys on top. It's Belmo, Simo, EJ, and
Kyle Troop. Very consistent.
I was remiss to mention Kyle. Kyle's fantastic. Yep. Kyle is one of the strongest players out there. So we are kind of seeing I don't want to say a renewal of the game, but you're seeing you're seeing the best right now, and I almost lost my train of thought. Do you think? And Packy, let's mention Packy. Packy had a fantastic year as well. Mm-hmm. He was able to kind of figure it out. Do you see anybody else kind of getting up to that higher echelon, or do you think the same, let's just say 5 bowlers will continue to dominate the tour?
No, I think you're going to see new people every year coming up, and they've had unique upbringings in the game. And, I'm excited to see Ryan Barnes give a shot at the tour trials. And I'm excited to see, the guy that I think bowls about as perfectly as you can possibly bowl, that actually had a down year this year was Chris Prather.
Yes.
I mean, Chris Prather is somebody that has worked on his game and gotten it to a level of precision that is, probably unprecedented. And I think he just needs to maybe get over a couple of things or just have a few things go his way. But he's primed to have a breakout year at any time. And he's already won a bunch of big tournaments for 100,000. But I mean, have you ever seen anybody just like post the shot more perfectly? I mean, like Parker Bone, maybe. I mean, he's just got or people compare him sometimes to Ozio, but Chris Prather is a guy that I never stop thinking about as a potential, because he can just do anything. And but no, you'll see these different people. Look at the U.S. Open this year. There was a kid named Landon Jordan who I'm familiar with because he's in Illinois. He's like 17 years old, and he made the top 24, and he was like fighting for the top 10. And I mean, and I watch him every week in all these youth tournaments, and this is a kid that he doesn't stop moving forward, and he's just got his father's a good bowler and a great coach, and I would look at a guy like him, and I know this kid named Trey Hendricks-Meyer from up here in Wisconsin that man, he knows more about the game than just about anybody. I mean, they study these bowling balls, and they study ways to bowl and ways to compete, and they think things through. They watch these pros. These kids today have the opportunity to watch YouTube and watch the pros and every move that they make in a way that we never did back in the day. And that enables these kids are thinking about when to take a re-rack. I mean, they are thinking things through, and I think that it's going to be remarkable, really, to see this next era of players come out and see how they can compete on tour. But when you saw Ryan Barnes take on that Players Championship and make the show, and then on his first show have like the front eight in his first game, and of course he's a dad, but his dad isn't throwing the ball for him.
Right. Exactly.
So Ryan, of all the kids that are his age, he's not everybody would say he's number one,
right.
So yeah, you've got a group coming through, and you mentioned the PTQs, and I just hate, I think it's so difficult, and to watch these kids travel around around to every event and try to make it through a PTQ that's like 8 games or 7 games, and you got to be in the top 10 against the field, and if you don't, you're out. I mean, it's too difficult, and that's one reason why we brought the tour trials back. And this August we'll have trials in the top 12 after a really substantial tryout in 4 different bowling centers and 4 different patterns in the Chicago area. Will earn that ticket onto the tour, and so those guys that were stuck having to travel every week maybe can get in that way. I'm glad we brought that back for them.
I am too as well. And you mentioned being able to watch more bowling now than you ever could before. Back in the day, you had to buy Marshall Holman's videotape or Nelson Burton's,
Cybervision.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's
Johnny
like
Petraglia was in that one. We used to sit there in college and we'd just sit and watch that. And we'd sit and watch it, and we'd drink a little.
I like listening to the music of that.
Yeah, the music.
Yes.
Marshall bowling, Johnny Petraglia bowling, and just hope it just
Marshall throwing a Brunswick edge. Oh my God, I love that ball.
I mean, that's all you had back then. So I mean, like the access to knowledge of how to get better nowadays, it's far ahead of what it used to be back in the day. I mean, you're right. The new kids have a better advantage.
YouTube is ridiculous, and it's just enabled you to study people and study their games, let alone the entertainment value of the channels that guys like Packy and Brad and Kyle and Darren Tang and Belma that have started, and that has a younger crowd following them in a way that we haven't had in a long time. So we really appreciate those guys doing that, and luckily and fortunately they're making really good money on YouTube monetizing their videos, and they do a great job. And we need to, the biggest challenge for the PBA is to bring the average age of our viewership down a little bit.
Right.
And if you have this strong viewership on YouTube, that can only help. So that's something that the PBA really hasn't had anything to do with other than encourage them, that they've helped the PBA that way.
You're absolutely right. We are going to get to some of your viewer questions.
Yeah, hit these questions. Yeah, anything's fine. I mean, I've been there. I've been in every single difficult situation and
we know.
questions
Yeah.
of all time. I mean, I'm not afraid of it. It doesn't matter.
We do ask some hard hitting questions, and we have such smart listeners and viewers as well. So let's start with Dan Benovitz here, who has lots of questions. First question: negotiations with. Have you ever had negotiations with Netflix, Peacock, to bring early rounds championship to streaming services, just like the WWE just got $500 million for Monday Night Raw? What can you tell us about the future of PBA streaming? Would you have a PBA Plus kind of pay channel?
Well, we had that. We had Extra Frame. I mean,
true.
We, during different times and when different contracts would end, we had the opportunity. And I haven't talked to Netflix, but we did talk to Amazon Prime back in the day. But Amazon, before it even became a big channel, and God, we had great conversations with them. I really thought we were going to get it done, and they had this vision of bowling being on, and at the same time we're on, bowling manufacturers selling equipment on the side of the screen, and just making it this interactive situation, and we were really far along. I mean, we spent too much time because I thought we got it, and it just, it was one of those things where I think the person we were working with, who actually had come from Sports Illustrated, and I kind of knew him a little bit, he left Amazon right at that time, and so things just kind of fell apart, and they had a few little things that made it difficult to close the deal. Like, they needed us to close caption everything. I mean, like, really small things sometimes slow you down.
Right.
And you go, how the hell are we going to close caption this? All right, we'll get, I wasn't sure they totally understood what we did, but
Tom, can you give us an example of that? Like, give us an example of telling you to close caption shit. I'm actually curious.
Well, like they say, well, yeah, you're going to provide this production, you're going to provide this video, and we're going to pay for it, and we're going to sell while it's going on, and you're going to get a percentage of those sales. Beautiful. Well, one thing we need you to do is close caption it, which means every word needs to be written out on the screen. And this was a few years ago. AI probably does it immediately now, as far as I know. I don't even know anymore. But back then it was like, okay, so we're going to have to pay somebody to type in every word being said, like essentially on Extra Frame.
Yeah.
And so we need to figure that out. It's not like that stopped us. It's just an example of one little thing, a little stall in the road, before signing with Amazon. And then we actually signed with Flow Sports, which, in 2018, once we were done with New Lion, with streaming, we had a contract with New Lion, which was, they were our platform for Extra Frame. At the exact same time that we were on New Lion with Extra Frame, the UFC was growing, was nothing at the time, and they were on New Lion, okay? And their shows and their coverage was basically Extra Frame for MMA. It was not great. It was one camera pointing at a ring. There was hardly any fans. It was minor league. Once in a while, they would do a big fight, and it would be on there. And just to give you a perspective of why we weren't able to take off, and we were both on the exact same platform, working with the exact same person at New Lion. And UFC grew to have over 300,000 subscribers at the exact same. We were like $69 a year, something like that. It was like $8 a month to get Extra Frame. And they got to 300,000 people to buy that at $69 a year. We got to about 10,000. And it wasn't that different of a product. You can't say, oh, if you just only would have done this, it would have been better. If Johnny Petraglia was the announcer, we would have been up to 300,000. That's not it. It just didn't have the drive that fighting and blood and gore and, the intensity of that sport.
Is it fair to say Pete Weber is the closest to MMA that the PBA had? Because everybody.
Well, he's known and he's fun and it's exciting.
But he's also a little bit nuts on TV, which is
nuts. But it's not.
What people
It's not punching a person in the face and strangling them until they.
But it's the closest we can do in bowling.
Yeah. Well, I'm just telling you, that's the numbers. Okay, so we had Pete Weber on every day on Extra Frame. All right. I just watched him on Bowl TV throwing shit out of his wallet. I mean, it was unbelievable. Did you watch that one?
I saw it.
The senior U.S. Open.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so, and that's Bowl TV. But at the time, that's what happened with New Line. And believe me, we hoped. I saw some joker on Johnny's page. This guy, Kenny Strode, who I'd love to talk about. And he says, well, Tom Clark was begging for people to buy Extra Frame. Yeah, I was. I mean, I really was.
Because anybody that's a fan of bowling should be begging for that.
Yeah. If we had 50,000 people, the revenue stream would have made us set.
Yeah.
Okay. So we put a lot of work into trying to build that product and market that product, and we ended up with 10,000. So then we went to Flow, who paid us a great rights fee and took care of all production fees. We made a little bit more money off of it, and that was it would have been fantastic. Then COVID hit. Flow took a big hit. Bolero bought the PBA. Things changed, and so we broke off from that. Now we're on Bowl TV. All bowling is there. The women's tour, the senior tour, all the junior stuff, all the college stuff, all the PBA stuff. So if you really like bowling,
which I think is fabulous, by the way.
Well, there's a channel, yeah, and we were all in. We're at the channel and working with the USBC on it, and still, we're at a number that isn't high enough to take us to the next tax bracket.
Mm-hmm.
It's and so you have to ask yourself, okay, so do people not want to watch bowling? Do people it's just not compelling enough for them to come to bowling? Or what? Because it's there, and all you have to do is subscribe, and the people that get it seem to like it. But 200,000 people buy bowling balls every year, but 200,000 people don't buy Bowl TV.
Right.
And if they did, I think we'd have a different world. So streaming has always been something that's been right there for me. I think we were ahead of the game. We were ahead of most sports with what we did. Even before me, the new PBA guys, the Microsoft guys, started on real networks with, you had to dial up with your phone. You could barely get in. I remember watching it and watching every match, and it was great, but there wasn't enough people, to drive that number. So I was a little disappointed with that support.
I'd like to kind of ask a follow up on that, Johnny. And I don't want to get you in any heat with Bolero, but we've been very critical on this show, and we don't mince any words, and we're pretty open with our feelings.
Just remind me to follow up when you're done.
Yeah, we're pretty open with our opinions about the sport and the show, and not disrespectful, but just because we love the sport so much, we have a passion for the game. Do you think Bolero does a good enough job promoting the PBA?
Well, I think they do as good a job as we ever did. Are there things that they could probably do? Probably. But I think the things that I've admired, and appreciate, a better word would be appreciated about Bolero's treatment of the PBA, and I think it can expand, is the start of the creation of the PBA Junior.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to do that. Couldn't do it. Couldn't get it done. We got it done with Bolero. It's a great program, and having a PBA Little League and having tournaments all over the country and a national championship and on TV, it's beautiful. I mean, and they made that happen. The PBA League Bowler Certification Program, 200,000 people immediately became members of the PBA LBC for free because they're a league bowler and a Bolero. So they get on the communication. They get the same communications as anybody that might be a fan of the PBA to try to drive them to the television show or to follow the PBA. And we started the PBA LBC National Championships, which is a very underrated tournament. You guys should bowl that tournament. It's a great tournament. I've been there the last 3 weekends. It's you bowl 6 games. You move every game. There's 4 on a pair. There's divisions for every skill level.
Yep.
If you win your division, you make it onto a TV show. The first place prize money is higher than any of these national tournaments that exist in all of the categories. The ultimate first place prize money is much higher than any. It's fun. It's you win the Duke Trophy. I mean, there's so many things about it that are tied to the PBA, and that doesn't happen without Bolero. They did that. They host a lot of PBA events, regionals, national tour events. They give up their centers for weeks and host the events. So, believe me, I'm not blind to the criticism of Bolero. And
Sure.
I get it, but there are positives, and so I would say that if you care about the future of the game, that you have to latch onto the positives and do the best you can to continue adding to that list of positives. That's the only way you can do it.
And I agree with that. And real quick, Johnny, I know you forget things, but just I have to get this out. The reason I asked you that was when we had Belmo on the show, he criticized Johnny's dad's generation for not realizing how great they had it. And he literally said, quote, they fucked everything up. When they had the contract with ABC, they were the lead in the wide world of sports for 45 years or 30 something years, 40 years, whatever it was. And then all of a sudden it was gone. And we're like, what do we do now? And the PBA ownership went through so many different transitions. Obviously, just playing armchair quarterback, and you were obviously a fan of the sport during that time. What do you think the ownership of the PBA could have done differently to try to keep not just ABC, because I'm not even sure if we even know the reason why they lost that contract, and maybe you have some insight, but do you think the previous generation, the golden era, kind of screwed it up for everybody else now?
Well, that's a little harsh. That's a little harsh.
It's still a great. I think that's a great question, Tom. So feel free to answer however you want.
Oh, I've studied it. I mean, believe me, and I've met the guy that was in charge of ABC Sports. Not only did I meet him, he was on our board, Steve Bornstein.
Yep.
And he was in charge of ABC Sports and ESPN. And he created the NFL Network, and he was there when ABC canceled PBA bowling. I mean, it came down to ratings. It just came down to ratings. It came down to what they could put on instead. And it was easier to put college football on. And it became easier and easier and easier to put college football on than it was previously to put college football on. And so, they just said, okay, we're going to want to do better in this slot. This isn't exciting enough. Now, if I was going to critique, I wouldn't say those guys screwed it up necessarily. But if I was going to critique that era of PBA bowling, and it wasn't really an owner, it was really an association.
Right.
The players had a big say in it. Johnny Petraglia was a president for a lot of it.
Yeah.
Eddie Elias, obviously, and then the next stages of who ran it. But I would have said what they should have done is pile up on the Tournament of Champions more than they did. Make the Tournament of Champions the Kentucky Derby of bowling, the Indianapolis 500 of bowling, the Masters Golf Tournament of bowling, and not just have it be this one great event at the end of the season that got the same rating as every other tournament that year. Usually the ones in January or February did better than the one in April because it was at the end in April when it was nice outside.
Sure.
And bowling always does better in the dead of winter.
Yep.
And create this event, the Tournament of Champions, that would have been impossible to cancel, just like the Kentucky Derby is and the Indy 500 is. And that event alone, like it's possible that as America changed, media changed, everything changed, everybody had different options, that, maybe watching PBA bowling for 16 straight weeks or 12 straight weeks on ABC and was not, gonna last. But watching bowling one day, the big one, and making that a staple of the professional sports realm would have been the right call at the time. This is all in hindsight.
Sure.
So it's not ripping people from then. I just think that was the way to go. And believe me, when I was with the PBA through all these different eras and all the things that we've gone through, I tried to do the same thing. I was trying to start it up in different ways. And at every turn, there's something that happens that it makes it impossible for you to do exactly what you want to do. But that's what we need, and that's what we could have had, I think, at the time. Instead, what they did put money towards was what almost every pro bowler still wants to put money towards: a summer tour, a spring tour, a fall tour. These guys want to bowl every week, all year long.
Absolutely.
And what happened is, when you do that, you sap your funding that you could put all into one event to create this immovable staple of sports. And so I think that would be the one thing I'd change about the history of the PBA, is that they would do that. They sort of did. I mean, they sort of built towards the Firestone every week, as you know, but it still was the same tournament, basically. And it didn't have there wasn't a promotion behind it to say, this is it. And that's one thing we still even like today, really, is this outside promotion. We're on. I mean, if you can't find us and you don't know we're on, we were on Fox broadcast channel television 8 times this year. Every major championship, 5 majors, and the playoffs championship was on network television. And 5 of those events, a guy won $100,000 for winning a major championship in a historic event on the PBA. And that's there. That's there this year. So if you don't think there's been progress, if you don't think there's been the opportunity for the PBA to succeed, you're wrong, because it's there. And so
I agree.
What we need to do is rally around that and figure out a way to get everybody to not only watch it, but get as many people as possible to watch it. So those numbers are high enough that a network needs you. You need a network to need you. That's it. I see notes about golf and things like that. It's just crazy. You can't compare it if your numbers aren't even close.
Right.
And when you look at the success of, forget live golf, that's a fluke. The PGA Tour and the U.S. Open in golf, or the USGA's deal with their network, it's kind of $1 billion. I mean, so our deal is not $1 billion. We've got a long way to go to that. And if we can create the kind of, well, you've got to have us. If you don't, we're going to go somewhere else. And then you're going to feel bad because you had us and you lost out. That's where we need our fans. We need audience. We need our people to stand up and thank, Fox, and say, I got to have it. Instead of going on and saying, oh, this wasn't any good, or this guy's two-handed and it's not any fun. That's stupid. Yeah, right. It's stupid for people to do that. But anyway.
Tom, I'm going to feed off that in 2 different directions. First off, and you can answer this question after the second part. I'm going back to the golden era. And again, back then, there was only like 4 or 5 stations on cable television. You had ABC, NBC, yada, yada, yada. And I brought up Dad earlier, winning $89,071. And Johnny Miller was the leading money winner on the PGA Golf Tour of the year at $271K. The ratio of prize money for the leaders was 3-1. But then again, there was only 4 or 5 stations that people could watch on their local television, So it's definitely false to compare what's going on nowadays, especially with all the different streaming avenues that people have. I mean, half of my generation doesn't even know what cable is. I mean, let alone the people that are younger than me. But the main question that I have for you, and I'm going to, kiss your ass here a little bit. You have not only figured out a way to run this ship since 2011, you've been trying to figure out ways nonstop all the time, which I think a lot of the haters, a lot of people that question what you do, I mean, we see this happen with anybody. I mean, in whether it be politics, whether it be golf, everybody criticized Bryson DeChambeau for having fat grips and shaving all of his shafts to the same length. Now he's out there having the time of his life, and everybody wants to be Bryson DeChambeau's best friend. In your eyes, what do you think the PBA is missing that could bring it to the next level that you either have tried, haven't tried, have thought about trying in your eyes? Because again, you see not only what everybody on the outset sees. All we see, I don't care whether you're watching Fox, CNN, Newsmax, the Five, like whatever it is, like you see it from all angles, from all different perspectives, which a lot of times people with, and I'm even going to use myself here, ignorant minds are unwilling to listen to. And I want to give you this platform right now to at least tell everybody that's here, because everybody here, to a certain extent, to some extent, to a huge extent, respects what you're doing, because you have not only kept the PBA afloat, but you have kept it in the eyes of the beholder. Everybody that cares about the sport, again, you mentioned earlier, you've introduced an entire new wave of people. You've brought them, and you have figured out a way to keep bowling going, which is one of the most respectful, awesome things in the world. For anybody that loves bowling, I'm asking you all these crazy questions, and I am fighting you and refuting you because I have the utmost respect for what you do. In your eyes, what do you personally think is missing? What do you think is attainable? And what do you think is attainable but a little bit far-fetched that this sport needs?
Yeah, well, that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, that's the whole question. I mean, and a lot of the things that I would have identified as things we need, I feel like we kind of addressed and we've had, and like a superstar, and you could say Belmont, you could say Kyle Troop. I mean, Kyle Troop's well known. I mean, people recognize him. You have to have that. We've figured out ways to build stars, but whether they catch on or not is really not up to us. You know, I think the number one problem is the same age-old problem that's been there for forever. And it's just this perception of bowling as not being a sport, not being hard, you know, not being dangerous, not being athletic. You know, they're normal people that are competing. You know, I'll just tangent for a second. I spoke at the Indiana 75th anniversary of bowling this year. They asked me to come and give an address, and it was in French Lick, Indiana. And all I know of French Lick is Larry Bird's from there. I mean, that's all I know.
Me
He's
too.
the hick from French Lick. And so when I got to French Lick, all I wanted to do was see Larry Bird Boulevard, see Larry Bird's statue, see Larry Bird where he played, you know, his house. I went to his house, you know, to see where he lived. And I told everybody there, you know, they got a statue for Larry Bird here. So everybody in French Lick, you know, can kind of believe, you know, you can come from a little town like this in Indiana and become a legend, become a star, and you could believe it. But I said, you know, if Larry Bird wasn't 6'9", there wouldn't be a statue. He wouldn't have made it. No matter how great he is, he was great. He's amazing. But he's 6'9". And the guy that was in the room when I was saying this was Mike Albee. And I was like, where's the statue for Mike Albee? He won the Super Slam. He was Rookie of the Year. He was Player of the Year. He won every major. He runs the Hall of Fame now. He owns a bowling center. He is the dream for a bowler, Mike Albee. And Mike Albee, what is he? He's a regular guy.
Yeah.
I don't know what, he's probably 5'9". He's anyone. And so anyone in Indiana, any kid could be Mike Albee. You can't be Larry Bird because guess what? 0.0003% of the population is 6'9", and 0.1% of the population is even over 6'5". This is an unattainable, goal to
Right.
play in the NBA. You can't. There's 3 guys in the NBA under 6'2". It's ridiculous. But in bowling, we don't glorify these guys the way that we should. And we don't say, where is the Mike Albee statue? And how do we get people to realize you can get into this game and bowl for a lifetime? You can go to college for free. You can bowl every weekend in a tournament. You can make it to the PBA, bowl on Fox for 100,000, like Marshall Kent did at the TOC, and say, this is the greatest moment of my life. And you can do all these things, and you don't have to be 6'9". And I just wanted to make that point to everybody, because for some reason, the 5'9" and the regular people part of bowling hurts us, because you'd think that people want to watch the amazing. They want to watch the dunk. They want to watch the fastest man alive. You want to watch, things that you cannot do. And that's the most frustrating thing about bowling.
Do we ever think about the fact that any size player at any age, whether they be male or female, can start earning scholarship dollars for college and go on a free ride and get a college degree because of this sport, whereas you don't need to be? I mean, look at the greats in this game, Tom. Pete Weber, Norm Duke, E.J. Tackett, Anthony Simonson, just to name a few. None of them are 5'8". I mean, none of them are 180 pounds. I mean, This is a sport that allows anybody, any age, any size, any shape to be the best virtually. I mean, honestly,
for some reason it works against us.
Yeah,
why
almost
would that work against us? But it does, because
that's so crazy, isn't it?
There's no respect. Yeah, and so respect and perceptions that have lasted forever. It's a joke. Most people's association with bowling is the one time a year they go bowling. They rent the funny shoes. They put their fingers in the ball. They have a goof, and they think it's fun. And so they think that's bowling. They're not introduced to it the right way, like we were, Sure. And sure. So you hope you can introduce people to the game through the PBA, and that you'd want to be there with that. But if they are not given respect by our own people, and in some ways they're not, we're just behind. We're behind everybody else. So that's one. The second one is media attention. And the media, I worked in the media for many years at the highest level. And I know what they want. They want clicks. They want you to pay attention to them. So they will only write about things that are interesting. They will only cover things that are interesting. So why don't they cover bowling? I mean, I had to fight to get that story in about me bowling on the PBA tour. I mean, right. and the only way I could get the story was to come up with this creative angle that I'll actually bowl and I'll tell you about it. Otherwise, they don't want to cover the PBA.
Sure. No, I get that. And, that's why people kind of bitched about giving an exemption to Mookie Betts. Well, I mean, Mookie Betts is a world-renowned baseball player who also happens to love bowling. Why would you not want to promote that guy and try to get people that are not bowling fans or casual fans to get more eyes on the product?
Yeah. Rob, I'm only cutting you guys off for a second. We have somebody that would love to meet the commish.
Okay.
Me.
Commish, I'm going to intro this guy real quick. I mean, everybody on the show already knows him, but I want to let you know this is not only my best friend, but also my chiropractor, and also an absolutely brilliant, open-minded brain, and you're absolutely going to love him. So I'm going to switch seats real quick, give him my pool-covered pillow ass that's really, really soaking wet. So it pisses him off, but I'm gonna send him in. Keep going, Rob.
So, getting guys like Mookie and Jimmy Allen from the country music world is a good thing. Getting the cross promotion with WWE, with Baron Corbin being on there and having other WWE superstars, having NASCAR involved. Like, these are pretty cool things that you guys have tried to do to get more eyes on the product. Dr. Ocho.
He's here.
The commish is here.
How you doing?
How are you, buddy? I just my hair. I finally got my hair cut, so I just got it finished. Thought you'd like it. I was hoping. I was a late appointment. I apologize profusely.
No problem.
And trying to put the kid to sleep. It was the kid. It was a whole rigmarole thing. You know how that goes. How are you, my friend?
Good. How you doing? Yeah. Do you know the band Los Straight Jackets? They wear wrestling masks. They all wear wrestling masks when they perform. So anyone wearing a wrestling mask is pretty cool. So
what mask? I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's the old joke from a long time ago. No, I'm good. I appreciate that. I actually we were trying to put the kid to sleep, so we usually it's a little more forewarned, but no, it's good to have you here, and I'm glad you like my haircut. Actually, that's what matters.
Same as
we got
mine.
the same one, technically.
We are the only bowling podcast with a guy in a wrestling mask. So I mean, that's one thing you can say about us from the other bowling shows. But getting back to what I was saying, getting mainstream talent onto PBA is a good thing, and I applaud you guys for doing that. Do you have any other plans to try to do some more cross promotions, or was that just an ability that you had with Fox because they had the NASCAR contract?
Well, we did the Chris
WWE
Paul.
contract.
My first year, the first event I put together for the PBA was the Chris Paul Celebrity Invitational that LeBron James won, the first one with Jason Couch as his partner. And, and it was one of those things where I went to the PBA and said, look, I can get this done because I know Chris Paul's agent. I know what, I helped put together his Pro-Am that he did last year. And LeBron was there and Carmelo was there. And Dwayne Wade was there, and I said, "Look, man, this is a TV show." And they said, "Well, if you got to get if you get a couple 100,000, we can do it." And I actually went to Ebonite at the time. Bob Reed, who passed away, rest in peace. Bob Reed listened to me, and I said, "I got to have this money, and we can do this event." And he gave me the money. He sponsored the event. And I remember, the guys from the PBA walking in, and they still just didn't really believe me. And LeBron James walks in with a bowling ball in his hand, like that. And the guy looked at me like, "Holy shit!" And they all just started smiling. And it was the most fun we had, and I was off and running. And we did the Chris Paul for 10 years, and he had plenty of superstars on the show. Kevin Hart, all these great stars.
T.O. was on there every year.
T.O.'s become a friend. I bowled the USBC with T.O. a couple times. I always have thought, if we can show that Chris Paul and Mookie Betts and Terrell Owens, they admire the pro bowlers. They want to bowl with pro bowlers, and they're amazed by them, and they respect them. That it goes back to what I was just talking about respect and perceptions. When you have the greatest athletes of all time admiring professional bowlers, it can only help. And it also brings in different audiences. Sure. And my thought always was, well, we bring these audiences in. They see Chris Paul bowl. Well, his partner is Chris Barnes. So next week when Chris Barnes is bowling for a title, you know him and you'll watch. So, we kept it going that way for a while. And that was
remember that Chunky Soup commercial with Jerome Bettis, though? They even did it. Well, it's got to be 05, 06, around that, maybe 04.
Yeah.
Because Jerome Bettis retired in 05, and he admitted he was a bowler. He bowled.
He's a great bowler. He's a Detroit guy. He came to our first PBA league, the PBA league.
Yes, exactly.
And he was an owner of a team, the Motown Muscle. He named him. He designed everything. It was his number 36 on the hood of the car and the Motown Muscle. His mom came to the first PBA league event in Detroit, and Jerome came and threw out the first ball. I mean, we've kind of done it all. I mean, we've done a lot of cool stuff, and so you just kind of got to keep clipping away.
That's what it is. You got to lay it in a few times. That's the thing,
Yeah.
No, I mean,
It's there. It's there.
Yeah, it is there, and you are making steps to get more coverage. Obviously, we had more coverage on television this year than any other year, which I applaud you guys for that. And again, when Belmo was on, he credited you obviously for getting the contract with Fox, and he really put Rob Stone over because a lot of people want to bitch about his commentary or he makes too many jokes with Randy or whatever. You're always going to have your assholes that make statements like that, but. Rob Stone was a huge proponent of the PBA and did a lot to get bowling with you to where it is, and said that you and him really should get all the credit for that. Obviously, you also came up with the World Series of Bowling concept and the World Championships. That look, we may talk shit about you sometimes on the show for some of the decisions you make, but we still respect your love for the sport. And we admire and applaud you for what you have been doing, like Johnny said earlier, to keep the PBA afloat and to keep trying to get more people to the product. So
it's probably not the easiest job in the world either. That's the other thing.
Right.
Man. You're like,
you gotta have
the Titanic. Okay, I got it. No, you don't got it. Somebody else has to get it.
You got to have thick skin to be the
not in that extent, but. It's hard. It's hard to drag a sinking ship up and keep it afloat, and it's still afloat, and that's the best you can do right now. And then it'll be taken off for all we know.
Well, I still get up, and that's all I think about. So it's not. It's really almost like not like a job. It's basically a passion.
It's your life. It's a lifestyle.
It's your life, and you're trying to push, and you want to make it work. And believe me, I see all the bullshit. I mean, God, I was when you advertised this show. I mean, I looked on Johnny Petraglia posted something and that we were going to be on, and I look at the quote, the comments, and you go, who the hell are these people?
Right.
I mean, what an asshole. I mean, like Kenny Strode. He's telling. He says he used to text me during my show and complain about things I was saying. All right, first of all, this was around 2010, okay? And I think what I used to text him was facts. So he just didn't say the wrong thing. Like he would say it's on Tuesday. Well, no, it's on Monday. That's it. I wasn't complaining.
Come on.
Then I see. I told him I was more than welcome to call in to tell me what I was wrong. Needless to say, he never did. I mean, this is a comment on Johnny Petraglia's Facebook page. I went on that Kenny Strode show that probably had about 8 listeners. I'm not kidding. I went on that thing at least 3 times, and I have proof. I have proof of it. So that's why. So things like that just bug me because everybody probably reads stuff like that. People do, and they just believe it.
Sure.
Or this guy, Rob Perziwazi, who I don't know, whoever that is.
It wasn't Francois, was it? Because
it's Robert Perziwazi. Do you even know what a bowling ball is? Yeah, I kind of do. Who has more?
We all watched the Flintstones. We've seen him bowl.
Yeah,
we know.
Last night, did you know you were an answer on Jeopardy? Yep, the answer was who is Tom Clark? The question was what is a figurehead?
Oh wow.
So like I have to read that shit.
Yeah.
And you have to you got to let it go. You have no choice. You can't answer it or you know, but you see it because
that's the worst thing though. You're right. Answering it is the worst thing.
And we brought up that with Belmo too, because obviously
that's how it started, right?
Oh, they killed Belmo. They killed Belmo. The guy,
absolutely.
Not one person could deal with him mentally, physically, in his game, his pride, his dedication, his passion for it. The amount of time it takes, that guy practices all night long. I mean,
yes,
to have the ability that somebody like that has, and all the PBA top guys that take shit. Chris Barnes, he's always killed, and Sean Rash gets killed. I mean, these guys are next level, and they really care about the game, and they can help you get better. And for some reason, Rob Stone, I mean, he gets more hate. I mean, come on, man. The guy made us popular. I mean, he's like the modern day Chris Schenkel.
He is.
In that Chris Schenkel didn't know anything about bowling, but he was famous broadcaster. He covered the NFL, the Masters, the NBA. He was fantastic. So he brought a credibility to bowling because of his stature in all other sports. Rob Stone does that now. He doesn't need hello. He doesn't need bowling. He covers the World Cup. He covers college basketball, the Big East tournament. He's the number one guy to cover college football on Fox. He's at Ohio State when they play Michigan. I mean, he is the top guy at Fox for a studio host, and he wants to cover bowling. I mean, give him a break, man. I mean, if all you're going to do is hammer him, you're going the wrong.
When he called Parker Bone Peter Parker, that was the only thing I ever had with him. But other than that, it's good to get mainstream in. That was the only thing. Oh shit! I got bounced out.
Can't you ask one question? Well, you should ask. He should ask one question.
What's that?
You should ask one question. You got to have one question or one thing that you'd want to talk about. I don't think you'd got a chance.
I do.
Yeah.
Why do I look so good? Why are my arms like this? That's all I want to know. Can you answer that?
It's from exercise. It's from exercise.
For real. Maybe the guy does know.
If you had to ask the commish one question you're curious about as a house bowler, what would it be?
He's a house hack.
Shit.
You're always on the spot. You'll figure it out.
I'm not on the spot.
I'm putting you on the spot.
That doesn't help because I'm a house hack. I'm a 221. Okay, make the house shot harder. Can you do that? Because I have a 221 average and I suck.
That's a Chad Murphy question. That's not.
Well,
but I suck.
One really good thing. I agree. I tried. I can't bowl a sport condition anymore at all. I bowl once a week in a house shot league, and it's not the same. It's just not the same game. I mean,
and he knows my bowling balls, and I don't.
You can never get there. So the thing that we did when I did work for USBC for a while, and one of the programs that I really spearheaded was called PBA Experience, and so that put PBA patterns in USBC leagues. We did a lot of videos with pros talking about how to play these patterns, and it gave people a taste. And really, it went to 30,000 members around the country. It made sport bowling a little more palatable when it was PBA Experience, and I was really proud of that program. Then when I left the USBC and went to the PBA, they stopped it. They turned it into like the Team USA Experience, and nobody wanted to bowl that, and so it just went down the drain, and it doesn't exist. But we are going to try to bring back PBA Experience type stuff in PBA LBC leagues, and so I think starting next year, maybe even sooner, we're going to roll out a league program that gives people a regular opportunity to bowl on PBA patterns.
I remember hearing about something a while ago, long time ago, that there was going to be a white, blue, red house pattern.
Yeah,
so that never came to fruition. So that's a thing, right? I didn't make that up.
No, that was a thing. We actually did a tournament in Wichita on it, and it was one of the highest scoring tournaments of all time. And Mike Scroggins won. Machuga made that show. I think Walter Ray made that show. It was at North Rock, and we did it on the red, white, blue. It's red, white, blue is what it was, and that was a good idea too. It just, I don't know. I feel like
it would have to be. Unfortunately, and Johnny always says this. So I don't know if they said anything about it. I have a little tagline for the house pattern. Remember as a kid, I was an athlete, obviously. I mean, Jesus, look at me. So when I'd play wiffle ball, baseball, I could knock the shit out of anything. And then here come the guy who didn't know how to hit. He had to use the big red wiffle bat, right? The house pattern has become the big red wiffle bat. In my mind, and I'm knocking myself for this. I promise you. I'm joking. I'm half joking with the whole this stuff and the house pattern. I can hit 10 boards and throw a strike. I don't know how much control you have over that because you're a PBA guy. I get it, but it just makes it. In 1980, Rick Riley wrote this. Great sports writer for Sports Illustrated. There were 1,200 300 games sanctioned across the USA, and there were 6 million league bowlers. Now there's about 2 million league bowlers, and there's 50,000, 60,000. I know with the balls and everything, but can we make it hard? Can we make it my point is, I'm really self-deprecating here. I promise you. I had a 221 average. I do not deserve it. I promise you, I don't deserve it. I have inferior equipment. I have stuff that he had to thumb out for me because my thumb was I promise you.
Yeah.
What can we do for the sport?
Well,
because
the problem is bowling is a business. And unlike
I know, and they're going to leave if they bowl bad. That's it. That's exactly it.
Well, most sports in the Olympics are not like that. Most sports in general are not purely a business where the only place you can even play is in someone's business. And so their business needs to succeed. And when they lose out because people gravitate towards a place where they can score higher, that really kills the integrity of trying to regulate lane conditions. I mean, believe me,
there's so many factors too. That's why. That's exactly why.
Yeah.
I played hockey. I mean, the ice was sometimes a little choppy. Ice was sometimes smooth. I mean, there weren't many other factors. So it's such a conundrum too, because you're stuck in this thing. And again, like we always say, if they try to bowl and they don't score, they're going to leave. And there's going to be a bowling alley that they could score at and feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
It needs to be uniform. Hey, who's the best bowler in your? I'm looking in your picture. I can't really see it. I got this mask on. Who's the best one in there?
Between Walter Ray, Dick Weber, looks like Don Carter, and Earl Anthony.
Yeah.
Tom, in your eyes, who's the best player in that poster?
Well, I will say Earl Anthony.
Agreed.
But you really couldn't go wrong.
No, you can't.
But I'll say Earl Anthony because there's something about all of them. But there's something about him that was existential, almost different in a way that you couldn't even put your finger on it. I don't know, but
that's because he didn't do anything out of the ordinary. He just
he had the
speaking of athletes, I mean, Earl Anthony was a professional baseball pitcher before he was a bowler.
Yeah, he's a great athlete, and he had the same bent elbow as Don Carter.
Yep.
I think that I don't know. I wonder about Belmo one day maybe being in that Mount Rushmore, and who he'd take over for, But it's there's been some greats. I mean, the worst thing about, or not the worst, but one sad thing about bowling. Thank God we still have Johnny Petraglia, but these guys all died early, like Don Carter, Dick Weber, Earl Anthony. And in golf, we had Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus and,
Gary
Player. Sam Snead was around until he was 90 or something.
Ben Hogan lived a long freaking life.
Yeah, those guys all lived longer, and so their presence was more there. And I've always tried in all my years with the PBA is to keep the legends involved. I mean, this year, John Petraglia won the Tony Reyes Award. Last year, he won the PBA League as a manager. The BVL was our official charity of the PBA. I had him hand over the trophy of the TOC to Marshall Kent. And that's just in like a few weeks period.
And Tom, which by the way, on my way over to the house, my dad wanted me to make sure that I said a huge hello to you and hope all is well from Dad to you.
Yeah, so
thanks. I forgot to do that at the top of the show.
I've always wanted to keep those guys close as possible, but it's so sad when they're not there. I mean, I got Susie Anthony is somebody I'm in awe of when I get to see her once or twice a year. I mean, just because she was connected with Earl Anthony.
Yeah.
So,
heck yeah.
Well, you mentioned the legends, and we've had Steve Jarros on the show this year, who obviously got into the Hall of Fame through the new category that you have, through the veterans category. Mm-hmm. Was that your idea?
Yeah.
People want to be assholes and throw asterisks next to those because
brilliant, by the way.
Well, there's just some people that just slip through the cracks a little bit, and I think they're worth putting to a vote. And you put them to a vote, and you see who wants to support them, and we leave it up to the Hall of Famers to make that vote and say you can come in. This first one actually surprised me. I wasn't expecting it to be Steve Jarros, but it was. And then you look at his career and you say, God, you know what? He should be in the Hall of Fame.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about this with guys like we mentioned during this show, Bob Learn, Ryan Schaefer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Guppy Troop.
It's the greatest category ever created, and nobody can refute.
Because they're really a true totality of it too. Like you're on the TV show every week.
Forget the TV show.
No, but I mean they're there.
It's the tenure. It's the commitment to the craft for so many years. All those shows, all the hard work, all the travel, all the commitment to the pro-ams, to the fans, to just the class acts. They all are.
That's what I mean. They put it on the title number, but they don't have to. They see like this guy. This guy has done so much. He's always there.
In the last year, the best ovation that the second best. I got an incredible ovation last week or in Allentown because the fans were so excited that we were going to come back that they cheered forever. It was great. But the best ovation from a speech that I gave was at the RPI last year when I announced that the RPI trophy would be named moving forward after Chris Warren. And they gave him a standing ovation. They gave him a standing ovation that lasted a lot. It was one of the most emotional moments. And no one knew that I was going to announce that, including the PBA and Bolero. So I just said it. Like, this is what's going to happen.
What's got a few titles, maybe? Or
he's the ultimate. Yeah.
But he's always out there, man.
And so being able to honor those guys, and probably one of the other proud things is creating that Duke trophy for Norm Duke. And when you win this LBC, you get the Duke. And if you bowl a 300, you get a mini Duke at this tournament. And it's a great trophy. That's kind of like a statue, back to what I was talking about, as we need 100%. Statues. We need to honor these guys. And that's another one where you see Norm's face, and he really appreciates it. And I've known him a long time, and, sometimes it's fake, sometimes it's real. You never know with Norm.
Tom, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, no problem. No, but I love when it's real and the emotion is that's an appreciation. That's respect, and I like that.
And when you gave Charles that news, I mean, he was floored. He didn't expect that at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and you guys videotaped the whole thing, and it was a really cool moment. And when we had him on, he was very thankful to you.
Oh, did you have him on? Good. That's
we
great.
did. Yeah, we had him on shortly after you made that announcement. He was very thankful for you.
Joyful.
Tom, I turned 40 years old this year, and in 1994 at Cavalier Lanes, Norm Duke gave me a Sensor 2 reactive, that blue pearl ball with the pink letters, no grips, no slug, and he signed it, JP Jr., you could be whatever you want to be, Norm Duke, and I still have it.
Nice.
So this is like one of the few things I've actually held on to. This is 30 years ago, so anybody that's a bowler, everybody wants to be Norm Duke. I mean, perfect trophy for anybody aspiring to be out there. That's badass, man. Well, what else do you have for a man who has kept
anything that's just terrible, and you got to ask because he's going to kill me after, and
we're going to get to Dave Peacock's question about string pins because it's obviously a hot button topic. But before I do ask that, the whole urethane situation, the whole Purple Hammer thing, the whole taking Belmont's balls behind the curtain and measuring them, he was a little bit upset over that. I'm just gonna say it's the GOAT.
That wasn't me. That wasn't.
No, I know. But I mean, there was a big hullabaloo about taking some storm balls out of play, and obviously the Purple Hammer. We've had people on the show that say urethane balls don't get harder over the years. What is the big deal? I mean, obviously we had people that had a ton of success with that particular ball.
Yeah,
and obviously your opinion differs from Chad Murphy's, where they just want to outright ban him completely, and you guys on the PBA side said it was a certain year.
No, you got that mixed up, but that's all right.
All right, well, sorry.
That's they eliminated a certain year.
Okay. Gotcha. It's hard to keep track when there's parallel stuff going on at the same time, but in your opinion, was it that big of a deal? Regarding the hardness?
You don't want there to be a specter or a feeling over an entire sport that a ball that's being used is illegal, and have that be the only conversation every week, all year for several years,
Mhm.
especially when there is data out there by the USBC, by the PBA, that shows that, forget whether it's harder or softer, the one way that we determine the legality from a hardness standpoint is with a durometer.
Right.
And when the durometer reads lower than legal, but the ball's legal, you're inviting this kind of conversation. You can't have that. You can't have that and hope that your sport is gambled on, that it's bet on, that it
Right.
becomes part of a sport. So we had to look into it. We had to do research. We did a ton of work. We involved all the companies. We told them step by step what we were doing, and we came to the final realization that, you know, the balls, at least by the durometer, that they lose their hardness, and with just one use, you know, whether it's the oil on the ball, whether it's just contact the ball's making with anything, whatever way that it's happening, it was happening. So in order to take that specter off the game, we basically said, look, make these same balls, make urethane balls. We're not making urethane illegal, but start at 78 because we know that they lose 5 points. If they lose 5 points from 78, they'll still be legal. They'll still be over 73. We'll be okay. You know, that's very general. It was a very long process, much more detailed than that, much more studies, much more data, testing, conversations, politics. It was awful. It was a horrible few years of trying to get through that situation. I'm friends with every ball company. I respect and love them all. And you're going to offend people, and you're going to hurt people, and you're going to bowlers. I don't want people to say, well, he only wins because his ball's illegal. I don't want that. I want the bowler to win and be given the credit that they're due. And so we felt like we had to make this move. I think that the reason why I think it was great this year was not one bowling ball was illegal. So you can't tell me a ball was illegal this year because we tested them all year long. It didn't happen. And so that's better to me than, and we didn't get rid of urethane. People still used it. The Black Hammer was great.
Black Hammer killed it this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the 78 UIQ.
78. I mean, shit, Brian Barnes made the first show of the year. That's all he used all week.
You know? And EJ Tackett can throw a ball in the box and still strike, so it doesn't really matter.
EJ was a great example of somebody who never used urethane, dominated the entire season without it. But a lot of people would say, well, yeah, but because of the volume of urethane on the volume of oil that's out there now, it creates this carry down that changes every shot. You can make a 38-foot shot 42 feet in a few games by using urethane. And that urethane assisted a guy like EJ Tackett who could whack on it and get that shim or get that hold and be able to just keep striking and never even have to use it. But this year, there was no purple hammer and there wasn't the extreme volume of urethane, and he still did it. So it wasn't like he needed it, So it was really a tough period of time. Neil Stremmel, who we brought on to the PBA and used to do the job for the USBC, was really important in that process. But it wasn't fun.
I can't imagine.
The first time that it was just red hot, and everybody was complaining about these balls and saying they were soft, and there were videos going around, and there were people that were sending stuff. I remember Kirk was the tournament director at the time, and we were in Chicago, and Parkside Lane's parking lot with the truck. And this was, and at 2 a.m. we went in, and I said, we got to check these balls. Everybody's saying they're illegal. We pulled out every single purple hammer. Pretty much every ball on the truck, undrilled. We called the USBC. They flew up with their durometer, and they came up and went in that truck. And we were out there from 2 a.m. until about 5 a.m. testing bowling balls. Every single purple hammer was legal. Every single one. So to me, I was like, they're fine, man. Stop giving me this shit. And we left it out there, and we did it. We didn't realize until following testing. And after the USBC tested balls at the US Open and reported the results that were showing balls at 67, 68, 5 points lower than the 72 hardness, that we realized, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because we tested balls and they were all fine. Well, we were testing balls out of the box. Balls used, we're testing low because they lost the durometer read lower. I don't care what, because people can argue they don't get softer. Well, the durometer read lower. And I'll tell you, I didn't just do this. I mean, I called Johnny Petraglia. I called him and I talked to him about it for a long time. Ask him. I wanted his opinion on this. I called Larry Lichstein. What did you guys used to do? What do you think we should do? I called Walter Ray. I called everybody. I mean, that to me, it was one of the biggest decisions and one of the biggest problems and issues facing pro bowling's credibility. And so I didn't want to half-ass it, and we didn't, and we did not. And so this is where we are. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I think it's better.
And Chris Wilson in the chat, I'm sorry we haven't mentioned you, but you're making a lot of good points here, and I feel like the commission is backing all of those up. So just wanted to make sure that you didn't go unnoticed. Chris Wilson in the chat. And also Sherry Morgan White, love you and miss you in Vegas. Just wanted to – Rob had to plug those two because they're making a lot of great points here consistently with the commission.
Absolutely. And, people want to bitch that the durometer may not be the most accurate tool to measure the hardness of these urethanes, but it is the standard and it is what you're using. So if you're using the same equipment to measure all companies' balls, then
we calibrate. We don't.
You can't bitch about it. It is a standard.
Someone can take a handheld durometer right now and push into a ball and say, "Look, it's 62." It's bullshit.
Sure. Right.
It's not like we're that.
You're not that stupid. Yeah. No, I agree. Okay, so string pins was mentioned by our buddy Dave Pico. We had Schaefer on a couple weeks ago. Schaefer had an amazing tournament at the regional. Almost won. Obviously going against the GOAT Walter. It's a different story, but everybody saw that messenger that almost was, that wasn't, that probably could have won the tournament for him, but he actually had positive things to say about it, and we've gone around the horn on this show for the last, what would say, year and a half, Johnny, when we really started to first come up into the forefront.
Yeah, and actually, Schaefer was the first one to say that he didn't throw a messenger all week, so he didn't expect that one to hit.
Right.
And he was.
Well, I was right there. I was in the front row.
He said that they were great. He actually said they were great, and
those guys like you because you've got to be flush. I mean, when you have guys like Walter, Haugen, and Schaefer telling you that and kind of endorsing something, I mean, these are guys that I love them all, but they'll tell you what's wrong.
Sure.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah. So for them to kind of, and I'm proud of the way we're handling string pins as well. We didn't just say, oh yeah, we're doing it because it's bowling and it's bowling center. We said we're gonna test. We're gonna do events. They're not gonna be for titles because we don't know what we're gonna see. We don't know the situation. I do know that for years I've been told by companies that string pins were fine, and I knew that those systems were not fine. So if we had walked in and just done it on some system and it was bad, like many of the older systems are, we can't have PBA tournaments on them. So I wasn't ready to just give away titles and points and just have tournaments because a bowling center wants to pay to have us there. So we said we're going to do at least 3, maybe 4 events this year that are tests. And the first one was the one that Walter won down in Florida. Neil and I both went to that event. And it really was eye-opening. We collected a lot of data. We gave a questionnaire to every single bowler and asked them to give us their opinions. Because we want to, at the end of the day, at the end of all these events, come out with our findings and say, look, here's how it's different. It's different in some ways. Here's how it's the same. Here's what's good. Here's what maybe is bad. And here's what we're going to do moving forward. We don't even know yet. We haven't met. We haven't talked about it yet. But this year, we're going to do these tests and figure out what's up. I'll say that as a bowling traditionalist, I did not like the idea of string pins. I think I've made all the same comments you probably would make, which are oh, it's like a video game, or oh, it's like playing a carnival game, and
Yep.
it's going to hurt the credibility of the game, and I don't like strings, and blah, blah, blah. I said all of that stuff. But I will say that watching the tournament, and sometimes you couldn't even tell.
Right.
And it also just it's definitely it's kind of like twister pins. It's harder to strike type of thing. But the biggest issue was probably that last shot. And when
Right.
when Schaefer could have struck and the pin's coming across and it stops because of a string on the lane.
Yeah.
Now, what you have to ask yourself and what we have to ask ourselves, what if that's a tournament of champions and it's on TV and we air it 50 times from every angle because it costs somebody a chance to win the tournament of champions? What happens in that case? Does that hurt string pins? Does it hurt the progress of, because from a business standpoint, we all understand it's hard to have mechanics. It's hard to fix machines.
Sure.
Strings are probably going to help a lot of these smaller bowling centers survive. We want them to survive. We understand all that. So you have to figure out, okay, is there levels where we'd allow string? Is there levels where we wouldn't? How do we help progress the game? Do we want that on TV? Do we not? So we have to figure all that out. And we're going to do all the diligence, just like we said we would. And it's the next big controversy in bowling after the Euro thing. And we're gonna handle it face on, head first, and try to give people a full view of what decision has to be made here.
So here's my thoughts on that real quick.
Mm-hmm.
If every center decided to go string pins and you level the playing field for everybody, nobody can bitch. We're all playing in the same machines. We're all playing in the same level. Nobody should have a distinct advantage. Obviously, shot making will be more of an essentiality. Do you ever see that happening in the future of the sport? Because obviously, if it keeps the centers open and it saves the mom and pops from going away, or if Bolero's on board and they put them in all of their centers and that's what runs on the PBA Tour, I'm cool with it. If we're all in the same playing field, we're all on the same level, go for it. Obviously, you don't want to have, okay, we're bowling Carolina next week. They don't have them. We're bowling, we're going out somewhere else. So they have them. Obviously, you don't want to do that because that's a slippery slope. Do you think in your innovative mind that string pins will be the absolute norm, say in 10 years or less?
Well, yeah, I think the only thing...
They're not going away, obviously.
Well,
with all the research that they're putting into it, they're not... I mean, it's a serious topic.
The thing that, and the guys that put this together are like freaking geniuses.
That's
They're engineers that have figured out every angle of it. Mathematically. It's incredible.
Right.
But the only thing I think you can liken it to is synthetic lanes. And, as a kid, I hated when they put synthetic lanes in. Bowling should be on wood.
Agreed.
I mean, it's wood lanes. And now how many lanes are wood and how many are synthetic?
Right.
So it's like 95% or something are synthetic. And so you can kind of look at history there and extrapolate and say, well, 20 years from now, will we be saying, wow, I can't believe we're on a free fall, machine because we're always on string. And it probably will work out that way. I mean, just gauging by by what I hear from the bowling centers, and to stay alive, they need to do it, and they're investing to do it. I mean, it costs. Let's say you have a 16-lane house, it probably costs almost $300,000 to replace everything and put string in. And so the fact that they know that they're going to be able to make their money back, fast, versus having free fall and the machines and the breakdowns, that tells you that it's probably an unstoppable situation.
Sure.
So in the future, it'll probably just be like synthetic versus wood.
And no more re-racks, no more having to reset pins for the most part. I mean, that should wipe it all out completely. The game will be quicker. It won't be 3 hours on a league night. I mean, that's a little bit misleading. Everybody says, well, the pin, people say the pin's set better.
I talked to those guys. Walter can see a pin off by a quarter of an inch, by an eighth of an inch, 16th of an inch.
He's dead-eye.
And he said they're not always set perfectly. So
okay,
you
all right.
still get re-racks. I mean, there's some things about it that, and I know there's some systems that do this now, but there's a bowling center locally in Milwaukee that just went to string called Foxview. We're going to do a regional here in October, and a lot of guys are going to come up and bowl that thing. And I bowled there. And what's really cool is how you can set up whatever spare you want to shoot, and you can just set up the 10 pin every single frame, and it's just so much easier to practice spares than it ever has been before. Wow. Because of the system, allowing you to do that. And I think that I also think it's really good practice on this. Now we got to remember we're talking about the certified.
Sure.
Many people are bowling on string pin sets that are not certified and they are not good. But the certified ones that USBC has said, yeah, these are okay. I think it's really good practice tool because even now, because you do have to be flush in the pocket to strike. And when you get on free fall, like my son's a good bowler and he sends messengers everywhere, but he doesn't send any messengers everywhere on string.
Right.
So he leaves 10 pins on string. So he learned you got to be more flush to carry. Then he gets on free fall and the pins are flying everywhere. You go, wow, this is unbelievable. This is great. So it almost makes free fall seem easier when you bowl on string, which is counterintuitive because everybody thought the string were going to make it easier. So
because obviously the ones that are not certified are. I mean, you see all kinds of weird fluky bounces and I agree. I'm all for it if it keeps bowling alive, if it keeps the centers alive.
Well, when you have you ever bowled on them?
I have. Yeah.
I mean, the thing to tell people too is when you're bowling. Now, what I was afraid of is maybe you could throw it a different way and carry as well, like BBs at the head pin. Throw straight at the head pin as fast as you can, and maybe suddenly that becomes the best way to carry in bowling. And it's pretty much shown me that that's not true. So what ends up happening is you pick up your ball, you wipe it off, you stand on the approach, you get your target, you have to execute your approach and your shot, your ball goes down the lane and it's hitting the pins, and all of that is exactly the same as any kind of bowling. So you're bowling. So by the end of the day, even though you're on these certified strings, you just feel like you were bowling. And so it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm playing some different game or some goofy thing.
Sure.
So that's good. That's a good thing.
That's true. Johnny, what else you got?
I mean, I could honestly, if I could sit here all night, I would. We have kind of reached the point where I do have just over an hour drive home to cater to my little dachshund. But I guess the last thing I have is honestly 2 or 3 main points here. Number one, Tom Commish, Mr. Clark. I personally appreciate your full transparency and just complete willingness to not only answer every single question, but give us the God's honest truth from every single angle from a perspective that most of us don't actually have the privilege of. Number two, it's always an honor to be in your presence. And thank you so much for giving a shit about the sport that we all love so, so much. And no matter what anybody says, whether it's positive or negative, I said this to Ocho earlier. I said, if Aaron Judge, I'm a Met fan, but if Aaron Judge hits 8 homers in June or 10 homers in June, he's the greatest. If he strikes out 30 times in July, he's washed up. He's a piece of shit. But it's the same people rooting for the exact same outcome at the end of the year. They want the World Series, right? And you are so level-headed, so awesome, so into everything that you do, and we couldn't ask for a better person in charge, and I actually truly mean that. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart and everybody that actually gives a shit about this sport from every single angle, perspective, and thank you for not only giving us a little over 2 hours tonight, but seemingly having no problem with anything that was thrown at you. That's the coolest, most awesome thing you can ever ask from a leader. You were just there for everything from every angle. So thank you very, very much.
I appreciate it. I'm here because you guys love the game and you want it, and you've got a better memory and recollection and feel for what we all want, what we loved about it, why we got addicted to it in the first place. And I know you guys have that, and so that's why I always want to address it. And I do want people to know that you can ask me really anything. I mean, I'm never gonna shrink away from anything. Some people are a little more comfortable just being able to throw bombs. I mean, it just makes it more fun for them because they don't really want the answers.
Most people want to hear what they want to hear. They don't want to hear facts. Meanwhile, if you're factual, it's the best kind of person to have in your corner, which is exactly what you are. So
the thing I'm noticing is that it got dark during this call, and now my office is completely in the dark.
I did notice that.
It was light out here before, but and I wonder how the NBA draft went. That was on tonight, right?
I just realized I was muted. We hung up the black curtain because it was light out, and now it's dark out, so we actually don't even need it.
We got a lot of shit from our friends and some of our viewers when I mentioned just even bringing you on a few months ago. Like, we're in the process of bringing on Tom Clark, blah blah blah, and obviously you're going to have the people that just only see on social media and stuff like that. Yeah.
It is funny to me how many people have an idea of who I am or and like I'm like some guy from outside of bowling that is like making money off of it. I mean, and it's just crazy. I mean, I gave up.
It was really kind of the point of showing that intro at the start of the show. Yeah. I mean, it was USA Today, bowling fanatic, bowling against the pros, and now you're the guy in charge of their livelihood. It speaks kudos to how much you give a shit about this sport.
I've done things that people don't know, and I've owned businesses. I've been in business. I kind of know how to work business. There's things that one person can't do. And believe me, I think everything could be better. I want everything to be better, and I just don't stop trying. And the next big thing that's happening for bowling, for the PBA, is and all these other things that we're talking about are just important to us, but they're not really big picture. The big picture, big dollars people don't even really care about any of these things, and they just want to make money, and so the next big thing is, we're on Fox through 2025, but this summer we have an exclusive period with Fox to renegotiate. And hopefully it works out and we're on Fox for years to come. If not, we will have the opportunity to move anywhere we can if someone's interested. And that's why we build every year, and why we build everything and try to build stars, so that when we sit down with these executives that only need to make money based on the programming they put on, they're not worried about, well, is it going to be string pins? They're not worried
they don't give a shit.
Worried about oil patterns. They're not worried about anything.
Right.
They just want to know that if they get this product, they're going to look good, and because they're going to be able to sell against it, and they're going to be able to make money. And so that's what you're really going for. And one of the biggest things we have are the fans. We have to say, I have to sit there, and we all have to sit there and say, we're giving you these people. So you want those people to look good. And the types of people at these networks that look and watch and make these decisions, they're not they dig right into social media, and they even dig into shows like this, believe it or not. I mean, and so they want to know, what are these people like, and what are we going to buy? What are we going to get? And are we going to get support? And is this going to work? And so that's the number one thing that the true fans can do, is just continue to support. And everybody I meet out in the road is fantastic, and realize, sometimes you might even have to beat back some people who want to be negative in different ways. Not that negativity is bad. I mean, as long as people are talking, it's good. But sometimes it'd be nice if people would kind of step up and not be afraid to say, that's bullshit, that's wrong, you're wrong, and that's what we need the really good fans, to do. So. And I love what you guys have done here. Like you said earlier, I bowl on Wednesday night, so I never get to watch.
That's true.
Well, Tom,
all the summer
credit,
I don't bowl.
all the credit for this production. I mean, obviously, Ocho and I are fucking badass and have massive guns and tits, but honestly, all the credit goes to this man right here, Mr. Rad Rob Francois.
Yeah,
do you still love that chicken from Popeyes?
Oh, and I love your opening music, which is the old ABC PBA music. I wish we could steal that and use it. But Fox actually
do not own the rights.
You know what Fox did? Because we love, I love the NFL on Fox theme, and I remember the initial conversations we had with them.
So good.
Can we use that? I mean, that's all I said. Can we use that? I wanted to use the exact same thing. And they said we'll make you something that's like it.
We got to get Kimberly Pressler to sing Carrie Underwood's song for the PBA with the mic and the dress.
I'm not
and
sure
the
she can
kit.
sing.
I'd
Maybe
watch
lip
that.
sync.
No,
I think everybody would watch. Ooh, Tom, maybe that's an idea.
Yeah,
Been waiting all day for Fox on PBA, but it's Kimberly Pressler. Let's fucking go, Rob. I really do have a long drive home, so either
All right,
you sign
guys.
us off, Commish. I'm sorry. But
No problem.
I specifically drank this one Diet Coke tonight because I got a long drive home to my dog, dude.
We'd love to have you back in the future. I wanted to get into the whole, I wanted to get into the whole COVID era because I know that was a huge challenge, but obviously we don't have time to tackle that tonight. But
yeah, we ain't gonna tackle that.
I do want to have you on
all
again.
The viewers for actually not only being here but still piling in and just wanting to see the commish. You guys are fantastic. I'll hit up each and every one of you on the way home as long as you're in the headset. So do me a favor. Either audio call me, just don't text me while I'm driving, and if you do, I'll message y'all when I get home.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Great to see
Tom.
you.
We appreciate it, bro.
Nice talking to you.
Thank you so much, Commish.
Have a good night.
I'm not joking. Evelyn's
I
going
know.
to probably piss her shit off. Rob, thank you for getting Tom Clark on tonight, and everybody in the chat and everybody here at Straight Up 5. We do this every week. We say this every single week for you. I'm going to sign off for Ocho, show you the smaller guns with the armpit stains. If you think these are bad, watch the 97 Showboat. Love you, Parker, but you should have not worn gray on that show. And I'll see y'all later. Later. Rob, close it out.
Yes, sir. Well, guys, we appreciate everybody coming tonight. We appreciate the commissioner for coming on the show and giving us 2 hours. I mean, it was absolutely amazing.
All right, I'll wait.
All right. You can go. You can dump out.
All right, I have to go.
I can close the show. Goodbye, Johnny.
Bye. Love you guys.
Love you, buddy. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in tonight. A lot that we still need to get into. I still have 1,000 questions, but obviously Johnny hijacks the show because, well, it's not the Rad Rob show. It's the Johnny Petraglia show. But no, seriously, congrats, Jesus Christ. Thank you very much to Tom Clark for coming on the show tonight. Look, I had a lot of different perceptions about him before he came on, obviously believing some of the bullshit that's on social media. Yes, Chuck, I'll ask him off air. I'm sorry. I look, there's so much we want to get into tonight that we didn't. But yes, I will ask him what you asked me to ask him off air. But what's going on, Chuck? It's good to see you, buddy. Sherry, thank you very much. We put a lot into this show. We always want to make it compelling. Hello. You'll say hi to Addison. It's my daughter who's been wanting me for the last hour as well. I admire Tom Clark a lot more now than I did before. Getting a chance to just listen to what he has to say about the sport that we all love. And he really gave me a lot of insight on the stuff that he has to put up with and the things that he's done to try to grow the sport. And I will give him all the credit in the world for that, where a lot of people don't. Hey, there we go. You want to say hi? Okay, good. Good job. Yeah, way to go. So, all right. I'm out of here. Next week, I'm not sure what we have going on next week. We're in the process of trying to get Anthony Simonson on the show because he does want to. He's been clamoring to get on, but I mean, we've had so many top-notch guests on the show for the last few weeks. We just don't have time for. No, I'm just kidding. We're working on scheduling things with Simo because we do want to bring the best bowler in the world right now next to EJ, and just it just shows you that even the best in the world want to be on Straight Up 5, just like you. All right, I'm done filibustering. For Johnny P and the Ocho, I am Rad Rob. Okay, I guess I'm done talking. We'll see you guys next week on another edition of Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr. Good night, everybody. Say good night.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr. You can follow the show on Twitter at Straight Up 5 Pod. Follow Johnny Jr. at JPJR07. Follow Rad Rob at Rad Rob Gaming. And follow Dr. Ocho at the Dr. Ocho. Got a question for Johnny? Send your questions to straightup5podcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr. Right here on the Rad Rob Radio Network.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.